My perspective on this really stems back, as we were talking earlier, to my early days as a lawyer, where because I have an excessive amount of responsibility, in addition to practicing law, I taught competition law in the evenings at one of the law schools in Pittsburgh. And at that time, which was the apex or heyday of the antitrust era, because the Microsoft case was going on, I was also advising clients that were trying to grapple with complying with the Treaty of Rome in Europe. At the same time, they were dealing with the regulatory landscape of the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice in the United States. And it may seem odd to you, but this was a real serious concern. The short answer always was comply with the most strict standards. That's the safest way. But, you know, the DNA of American business people, as you have seen, is they don't seek to comply with the letter and spirit of laws and regulations. They see those as guideposts, and in many cases, taxes and impediments to their ability to make money. So it is a hard sell generally, all the way back to prior times, to convince business people that regulation is good. And there's a tension, sometimes healthy, sometimes unhealthy, between our regulatory framework and the regulators and American business. This has now reached a fever pitch when you talk about the digital era. And so one of the reasons, and there are many, but one of the reasons that I have sought to expand my voice and my work here at Trinity and in Europe is because I believe, and I've written articles on this, that Europe is way ahead of the United States on sensible regulation of the digital space. Two primary examples are GDPR and the AI Act. And America has found itself only referring to those regulations from a defensive posture. You may remember Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress when the overreach of Cambridge Analytica led to a public awareness that caused congressional hearings about how intrusive the tech companies were in our privacy. And there was a lot of conversation that night, but really it came down to, well, we will comply with GDPR, which isn't even the law in the United States. With respect to AI, you have led the way on AI here in Europe with your AI Act as of 2021, which I think is brilliant. It is a risk-based analysis which evaluates the application based upon unacceptable to be evaluated or okay. It creates a sandbox experiment platform so that things can be tested and tried and impacts and deleterious consequences can be evaluated before they harm people. And in America, we have lagged behind. We really have no standards. During the Biden administration, there was an AI Act that was sector-based as opposed to risk-based, and effectively nothing was banned. And what we have upon that is about 29 states have enacted state AI Acts. Colorado's probably the most aggressive of our states. And of course, within our system of 50 states and the federal government, that's just a petri dish for conflict per se. And then when Trump was elected, what you have seen is what you would have expected. An immediate executive order basically asserting that we're not going to regulate AI, that we're going to invest in innovation, the entire purpose of which is to expand American dominance and make America great again. On top of that, you watched that cringe-worthy speech by Vice President Vance in Munich just a short time ago. And there's about a minute 20 on AI there where he warned Europe, offensively in my view, that Europe better not regulate the American tech companies or they will pay consequences. Now, that's the landscape. That's where we sit. And the question is, where will we go? And my belief this is one of the many reasons why this partnership between the University of Pittsburgh and Trinity and the work that we aspire to do here with partners of goodwill, and maybe some of you in this room and maybe some of you within the community that could be brought to the discussion, is there's going to be a need to do research outside the government to bring to the government and to the tech sector things that are going to protect the public. There is simply no way that AI can be unleashed without some consideration of both its wonder and its magic and all the good it can do, and the downside consequences of either malign applications by bad actors or unintended consequences because it's simply being released before it's ready. Even in the United States, there is very little that hits commerce that isn't tested. We have underwriters' laboratories in the United States for all commercial products. We don't want washing machines blowing up. We don't want microwaves destroying people's lives. You cannot put products into the market, and everybody has accepted that that's a matter of sound practice and safety. In fact, and indeed, the Solarium Commission, which was done by a bipartisan American Congress in 2018, which is a beautiful piece of work that I commend to you. And if you don't want to read all of it, just read the executive summary, came up with 67 concrete suggestions that the Biden administration was very good about, with the help of the Republicans, putting into place very fast. And cyber incident reporting was one of them that's particularly important to me. We fought a long time over whether a breach for one company was owned by the commons. And we finally have gotten to a consensus that we can't have a breach in one company because it could impact other companies. But one of those recommendations of the Solarium Commission, which therefore was bipartisan, had bipartisan acceptance in my country, was that we needed to create a cyber equipment ecosystem that mirrored the underwriter's laboratory qualification necessary to put, things in your house. So why wouldn't we apply that same logic to something like AI? So I think it's going to be a problem that America is where it is, but I think every problem has an opportunity. And I think Europe's leadership, prior to the advent of the second Trump administration, can now be extended and exploited. And I think the fact that we have this transatlantic academic and research partnership can also become a bounty for those of you that care about this, and for, of course, our fellow citizens in the community that we care about every day.